machinery is such a big part of broadacre businesses now, and looking at that cost relative to income, I think there's a couple of really key benchmarks I guess we work through with growers all the time, and targeting like one rule of thumb is like really bringing it back to what's the income in an average yield, average price scenario for the business, and trying to spend no more than 10 cents of that relative dollar that's being created on that machinery component. Because you think about it, if you spend too much, and it's very, very easy now with the cost of gear and the major equipment, especially for big broadacre cropping businesses as well. If you can really sort of, I guess, be strategic, it's why we use machinery replacement plans. It's why we have strategy around trying to balance those really big ticket items that cost a fair. Well, they're a very, very big investment for an operation now, and trying to really sort of smooth out that cash impact allows you to sort of sustainably invest in your fleet, but do so in a way too where it doesn't limit your opportunities and abilities to expand when the right opportunity comes. Make sure you're rewarding yourself with a strong wage relative to the time and impact you put into the business. And the other one too is like that other secondary target, because the machinery repayments sometimes can be very much a timing thing. Jump up in scale, we have to increase the fleet, and there is always periods where we have to go outside the rules of thumb when things change in a business. So even that same other rationale is almost 10% of the fleet's value is another really good benchmark, which hopefully, again, should be relative to the income that's being generated by the business. And those two schools of thought, those two benchmarks to keep in mind is a really, really strong standard or benchmark to keep in the business to make sure you're not overspending in that area, which is very, very easy to do in this environment we operate in.
Yeah,
planning the machinery purchases out over the next few years is really important, because if you've got that benchmark of that 10%, but at the end of the day, it isn't necessarily a bad thing to go over it if that's what your plan is, because those real key items that need to be right, with sprayers, air seeders and headers, they're really key things. They're big investments, and it might see you going over that target for a year or two, but if you know that, then you can plan yourself to say, well, where are we going to cut back somewhere else? Where can we defer some other machinery replacements? Where can we run other machinery longer? Because those key pieces of items have to be changed over and they need to be right. So we're willing to stretch ourselves against those benchmarks for those periods of time at the cost of something else, but we know it, and that's part of our plan. So if we know that plan going forward is really important. So sitting down and working that out going forward is a really important thing.
and part of the planning there too can not always be like smoothing it out, but also bringing purchases forward. So yes, you might be well above the 10, but you could be well below too, and it could be indicating, perhaps you should be looking to bring things forward because you've got some lumpy bits coming up in the next few years, and the business at that time may well could afford to do it. So it's not a bad thing to be spending money on machinery because it's the necessary evil. But it's keeping it in check, exactly what you're saying, knowing that you're not too far over those that key benchmark level, but always working back towards that target, whether it's going up or down.
Yeah, because if you are under, then you do see people that are under that sort of target, and you can actually look at it from the perspective of, well, are you investing enough in machinery to ensure you got the best of the technology you can get, the best efficiencies you can get, the best reliability. So, are you spending a lot on repairs and maintenance because you're holding back on replacing machinery? So, is there an avenue to actually start spending some more on machinery to actually not essentially trying to mine your existing fleet, but actually bring it up to speed, get the better technology and what you need from there. So there's the pros and cons of going both and below.
Yeah, that's a good point about the productivity too. Look, you often see the lag effect in that you've got to make the investment up front, but that increase in productivity is going to come a bit later. So yes, in that year in isolation, it looks a bit out of whack, but if you fast forward a couple of years, hopefully that investment's paying off.
Yeah, and it's the due diligence that goes at the start. Like, it's finding that balanced approach around, do we have the right gear? Is it effective and going to allow us to optimise the income, optimise the things we set out to achieve, or is it potentially a limiting factor? But at the same token too, not getting caught up with we need. It's actually being really disciplined within a business to say we genuinely need this and it's going to bring a productivity gain, versus if we want this, it's fine. Businesses who can afford to spend more in this area, it's this understanding that that's a choice and it might limit your choices to invest in other parts of your business. So I think, that 10 cents of every dollar, or that 10% rule of thumb, is a really good place to sort of try to keep that in check and hover around. because it does still maintain that flexibility for those other key investments in your operation.